That is a funky umbrella. That is very 90s. I like it. I'm gonna buy it. It's called a retro umbrella. I like it. That's so awesome. Please. I lived in Washington for like 8 years. I know what freezing weather and below freezing is like. One time, so I drive an old pickup truck that I got from my family, and one time, one winter of 2008 to 2009, we had really fucking bad storms and blizzards and shit all winter long in eastern Washington, and it was really bad. My pockets are full. I need to go do something about that. I should go to the museum. That's a good idea. Let's go to the museum. What was I? Oh yeah, bad 2008. So, during that time, I worked at a grocery store, and so I was running late getting out before closing, and so I was busting my ass mopping a floor, and I was just like burning up because I was wearing a hoodie because I didn't want to take the hoodie off because it would be time wasted to go to the back room and put it away just to continue mopping. I wanted to get it done, so I rushed through and I'm like burning up because I'm just like so overheated. And we go to leave and lock the door. I walk out to the truck and the lock is frozen on the door, and I'm like, fuck. Because it's just kind of a thing when you live in an area like that to spray WD-40 and inside the lock so it doesn't freeze up, and I guess I hadn't done it recently enough and it froze up and I couldn't do anything. And so luckily the coworker who closed with me lived across the street from the store, so I asked him to go get a hairdryer, and so he went and grabbed a hairdryer and we plugged it in just off the outlet on the side of the grocery store's building, and we pointed it at the lock for 5 minutes until it let me go. And meanwhile, I didn't even notice the cold. Paul is the one who was there. He is wearing this big fucking down jacket. He's from Georgia, and he's wearing this big, thick down jacket. And that is not going to grow being next to a tree. I don't have an axe. Well, waste of a shovel. And so I'm like not even cold in the slightest because my body heat is still just like so. My body temperature is still so high up there, and so I get in the truck. I go home, and on my way home, I have to pass one of those big light up signs that tells you the temperature, and it's 9:30 at night or so, and it's maybe mid-December, mid-January, and the sign says -3. I didn't even notice. It was -3 degrees, and I did not even notice. One thing I did learn living there so long is that when it gets below 20, you don't really notice it again until it gets like below -5. From that range, it kind of feels the same, and then instead of getting colder, it just starts to hurt. That's it. It just starts to hurt. It doesn't really feel colder. Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of interesting things. I've gotten stuff. So, my truck is front-wheel drive. It's an old pickup, so it's also very light. And I had no weight in the back on this particular day, and it's 4 a.m. and I have to get to work to the grocery store to unload the freight truck. And my house is up on this little tiny hill, and I have to drive along a little bank to get over. And then there's a little river, and there's a stop sign, and then it gets onto the highway. And it's all snowed over. It's all snowy and icy, and I lose grip right as I make that turn, and I start sliding over to the ditch that I know is there, but I can't see because the snow is all piled up. And I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna get stuck in the ditch at 4 a.m. on this highway. And luckily there's no traffic at that time of day, so it was totally fine. But I was more worried about being stuck, being late to work. And so I try very slowly, you know, just backing up, trying to angle it, but I can't do it. I've got no rear grip because it's a front-wheel drive thing, and one of my tires is like almost over the edge. And so I got to the point where I could either go out, try to push it back myself, but that wouldn't work, 'cause I'm a weakling. And it was on like a little bank, so I would have had nothing to brace against or stand against. Or the other thing, I could gun it and try to jump it. And that's where my logic went. And there's nobody on the highway. It's either that or, if I fail, I get stuck in the ditch anyway. And I was pretty much stuck as it was, so I was like, fuck it. I backed up that like 2 inches that I could, and I slammed on the gas going forward, and I bummed right over the little embankment that I couldn't see, and I made it onto the highway, and I'm like all swerved and backwards and shit, because the highway is iced over. And I was just like, woo, I did it! And so I go to work, and there's a little house in the corner right there, right at that turn, and there's an old guy who lives there, and his name, I don't remember his name, but he goes into the grocery store later that afternoon, and he's like, so, have a little trouble this morning? I was like, fuck, you saw that? And he was like, yeah. I heard you backing up and going forward and trying over and over. I was going to go out there and offer to push, but by then you'd already done it and gone over. You probably shouldn't do that again. You might get stuck. Next time ask for help. And I was like, okay. Shucks. I have a lot of stories from that place and that time. That's me. And what was another good one? Oh yeah, so it was just also in the same winter time there. 2008-2009 was a really bad winter. And for most of the time that it was snowing, the highway was covered in ice. We had 1.5 inches thick ice over the highway. So everyone was going super slow. There was sand on the highway that the road workers dropped and for grip, and the few people had chains were going super tiny, super slow, and I had a really hard time getting to work. I had a hard time getting on my driveway because my driveway was on a slope, and so it would ice over too. Couldn't get out of the driveway, and so little things like that I was having trouble with. I didn't have chains at the time because most of the winters are pretty mild. You didn't need it. Fresh snow, you don't need it at all. You just kind of go over. But it snowed a lot, and then it froze over, and then it never got warm enough for it to melt away. So it just became a fucking nuisance. And which is how I imagine Canadian winters to be like. And so I got the flu. That's what happened. I got the flu, and I didn't go into work for 3 days. I took 3 days off work, and on the 4th day I was supposed to go back. No. I should preface this because I remember exactly when this happened. This was the last week of March of 2009. It was snowing really badly for about 2 weeks straight. Like every day it was snowing, every day it was really freezing, and it wasn't melting off or anything. And it finally stopped. Hi, Loopster. It finally stopped. It stopped snowing, and it was actually warming up for a little bit for a couple of days there. And so when I took my time off because I had the flu, I was thinking by the time I went back to work, everything would be clear and the roads would be clear, because it looked that way. It honestly looked that way. And then, so the day that I was supposed to go back to work was April 1st. I'll never forget this. It was April 1st, 2009. And it was a horrendous blizzard overnight. Just torrents of snow, and it was terrible. And so I'm out there shoveling. It's like maybe 3 in the afternoon, and it's almost pitch dark because the snow is so thick. And, no, it must have been like 1 p.m. because I usually went into work at 2. And so I'm out there cleaning snow off my car and trying to get out of my driveway, and it's piled up on the road out of my driveway. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that. My car that I had at the time was really low to the ground, and I had no chains. I had a set of tires, but they were fucking useless when the snow is that thick. If you can't grip the ground, you can't do anything with a set of tires. So I was at a loss, and I called in, and I was like, I told my boss, I'm like, I'm stuck. I can't get to work at all. I can't do it. And he was like, you missed too much already. So-and-so's already called out because they're stuck too. I need you here. And I was like, I live 2 miles out of town, and I can't get out of my driveway. What am I going to do? And so he was like, fuck it, I'll go pick you up. And so he has this all-wheel drive pickup truck that sits like 2 feet off the ground because it's all raised up and everything. And he drives out while I walk down to the main highway. And I've got this like fucking coat on. I can't see 3 feet in front of me because the snow, the flurry is so thick. And that little waterway that I told you was covered over in the other story, I fell into that because I didn't see it because I couldn't see at all. But I saw the truck off in the distance. I saw the silhouette of the truck. So I went and I climbed in the passenger seat, and he very carefully turned around. There's nobody on the highway going either direction because who the fuck would drive in that weather? And we drove back into town in complete silence because we were going like 2 miles an hour, trying to stay on the highway, trying not to slide off the road, and just like amazed by this crazy flurry of snow that was happening out of fucking nowhere. And so we get to the store, and his wife is on their little miniature snowplow, which is basically a golf cart with a plow on the end, and she's trying to plow the driveway. There's only maybe 2 customers who are coming in just to try to buy salt and shovels, and so we spent pretty much the entire morning or the afternoon trying to shovel the store's driveway and keep it under base to be able to pull up. And the snowplow broke off because Leslie didn't know what the fuck she was doing, and she made the pressure too tight, and she broke this chain on the thing holding it onto the golf cart. And so the plow was broken, and we're like, okay, we need to lift this in the back of the truck. I'm basically the only one there. There was one checker. I was doing other stuff like stocking, maintenance, cooking, and other than that, it was just the owner and his wife. And so, yeah, I know about Toto Kitty Kane. He's cool dog-faced guy. And so the snowplow's broken off. We need to lift it in the back of my boss's truck so he can take it home. And that thing was fucking heavy as hell. That was one of the heaviest things I've ever had to lift. And like, I'm wearing these gloves, right? So it's like slipping, and I'm like, ah, fuck, and I need to try to get a better grip. And in the process, I set the ground edge of it on my wrist very slightly, and it cut my wrist open. And so I'm bleeding as we do this, as we're lifting the fucking thing into the truck. And I'm just like, ah, shit. And I go inside, I'm like wrapping my arm up. And I managed to get home. He managed to get me home. And the snow had let up just barely enough where the road was able to be tolerable. I barely got home, so I get home, my wrist is sliced open, I got this bloody band-aid on. I'm fucking dead tired, and I'm sore from all the shoveling and all the manual labor aspect of dealing with that weather. And next morning, all melted off, completely gone, like it never happened. I shit you not, that's what happened. That's the story. And I'll never forget that shit. I have a lot of stories like that. I have a lot of stories like that. That's just 2 particular stories that... Yeah, a story of how I almost died, bled out in a parking lot. Oh man, that was great. Good times. Good times. I have to remember to cut this episode for the YouTube at 46:35. Remind me that. I need to write that down. Hold on. I'll just write it in this notepad I have open right here. 46:35. Because if I cut it there, I can finish the story.